Good evening, this is Pine Leaf Needles, and welcome to LOTRO Players News, where we take a look at the news in LOTRO, and here at LOTRO Players. And tonight we have with us Draculetta,
Greetings, Lotro.
Etheros,
Hey.
Andang,
Hey, everybody.
Mystery,
Hey there.
and Cithrith.
Hello.
And tonight we'll be talking about our top story for today, which isn't really all that much, and that is Q&A from Eldar.
Yeah, it's the Shield runs with the Dwarf through Moria. Eldar was the first server. Technically second because they did Bull Roar, but this was the first official Shield run that actually counted for, time and stuff. And yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of information, but so I pulled out some of the points. Sapiens answered a lot of questions about raids, which I was surprised about because, as we know, there are no raids coming, and he said that multiple times. And so basically, then people started asking, like, what does it take to create and test a raid? And unsurprisingly, again, it takes a lot of resources. They have to get animators and artists and QA teams and playtest teams and just lots of testing. And
And then
yeah,
people
it takes a
complain
lot of
that they
time.
don't work anyway.
Yeah, and then people complain that they don't work anyway. Um, so, but then Horse Dev said that raids are an order of magnitude larger and are vastly more risky than anything else, and they are definitely on a level all of their own in terms of time consuming for creation. And Sapiens then said he wants to be really clear on this, that is not why they are not doing them. He doesn't want anyone to conflate the question and the answer to an unrelated question. The reason they are not making raids is because the percentage, based on their 8 years of server data, they said that the percentage of people using raids and instance clusters is too low to, um, you know, what
Justify
is the
the
word I'm looking
expense.
for? Yeah, justify the expense, exactly. So that got people riled up, which is not surprising. And what are the other questions? Let's see. If the devs and Roan want or do see that more of the player population uses raids and instances, will they make more? Again, this is just them clarifying that based on 8 years of data, this is how it is. People don't really do them that much. A very small percentage use them. So, you know, they don't. They're not making raids right now. And yeah, the other questions are much less exciting or interesting, I guess. Question about integrating streamers into the community more. They know people stream Lotro like us, and he knows, hint, hint, nudge, nudge for any Turbine people watching, maybe. He knows some of us stream from time to time, and they've had some conversations about integrating them into stuff a little bit more. So who knows? That'd be cool. Don't know though. Question about Marthiel runs. If you don't know what that means, basically back in Shadows of Angmar, a game master or developer would take control of the Amarthiel character and would go to the Entenmoors and I believe some other places as well, like show up in some other places like Forakel. I don't
Yep.
remember. And so then players would have to like take down Amarthiel and there'd be all sorts of cool loot and stuff. And it was a really fun event. So they, obviously wouldn't be able to do Amarthiel again for lore reasons, but they said nothing is impossible. So who knows? That would be a cool kind of event to have again.
Shelob attacks Minas Tirith. No.
Now that would also not be very lore appropriate.
Well, yeah, you got it there.
However, if we get to hear Pineleaf announce it, I think that it should happen.
Yes.
He has to
And
voice
then
Shelob.
He has to voice Sheila. Now this has to happen.
apparently Sapiens also has some secret things for update 14. Apparently, yeah, he has secret things. He has having a hard time not talking about them. They're not earth-shatteringly game-breaking top secret, but he wants to wait and reveal them at the right time. I have no idea what his secret things might be. Maybe that's the 3-person group instancy thing? I have no idea. I have no idea what his secret thing is.
Yeah,
Maybe it's
that's
swan pets. Oh no, we already know about those.
Yeah, we already know about Swan
yeah.
Pets.
I don't know. That's kind of
I hope it's something cool and not something just like, hey guys, like here's a, I don't know, quality of life thing. I mean, quality of life things are pretty cool.
we
Like
have a
mail,
lucky
but
horse bridle that is coming into the game that may or may not
uh,
affect your war steed in any way.
Oh,
yeah,
good grief.
Erebrandir's other horseshoe.
His Carebender's horse bridle just laying around there.
Eventually, we end up with like a whole war steed cosmetic set for Erebrandir's
You know,
horse.
that would actually redeem the horseshoe for me. I got to be honest. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I'd be pretty into a cosmetic.
mm-hmm.
But speaking of cosmetics and war steeds, the next question is someone asked about the gear and the accessories that you can get for war steeds. Currently, they are not dyeable, which is really unfortunate because some of them are very bright colors like red or even worse, yellow. Like, it's terrible. But someone asked if they can make them dyeable, and he said he's going to pass that request along. It's been requested a couple times, and so he will nudge it a bit. And as you know, as a cosmetic lover, I'm all for that.
Even more for it if the person he talks to listens to the nudge.
Yes. Listening to the nudge is the key part of that equation. Implementing the nudge.
Implementing the nudge. Oh my.
All right. Anything else, or is that it?
I think that's about it. There was also a another shield run on Duero Delve, but there was not really any useful information that came from that, to be honest, because I watched that
Oh,
live. It was a lot of food discussion.
I presume then that you are going to be at Tuesdays, the one that's going to be at Winfola?
Indeed, I will. I think I don't remember what time it's at, but hopefully it's not while I'm
Five,
asleep.
it's 5 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock server time, which should be 9
Yeah, that should be
a.m.
9
for
my.
you.
So yes, I will be there. I don't know if I'll be on Windfola, like participating, or if I'll be in the chat, but I'll be there.
All right then. On Monday, there is scheduled downtime for maintenance from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. That's 9 hours that is scheduled for. So it looks, what are they doing? Redoing all the cages for the hamsters or something?
I don't know, but there's a good chance that you're probably listening to this podcast during the downtime that's still going on. So,
Yes.
best of luck to the servers getting back on later today if you're listening then.
Yes, because so that is a pretty long downtime. I'm guessing that this is that they're getting all these maintenances in before update 14 to make sure that everything's nice and smooth when that update comes. But who knows what happens at turbine. Now our third story is U14 build 3 notes are up. And anyone have a chance to do anything on build 3 yet?
Yeah, there wasn't anything major. The main thing, and usually this is true with the third build of things, is it's usually a polish build. And that was definitely the case here. There's lots of tiny details that they put in, and just a lot of focus on the NPCs. Now there's the Gondorian leather armor, which I think looks amazing. Um, I I didn't expect it to look like that, and I think that it actually surprised me, and I like the way it looks. One somewhat major thing was that there's a huge marketplace inside of Dol Amroth, and there has to be at least 200 NPCs, probably a lot more, just in this marketplace. So you can imagine there's a whole lot of lag in this city. Also, there's actually a boat. Actually, there were a couple boats we found out. Me and Atharos found, and Sithith, I guess, found out that are patrolling around the ocean now, or the sea, I guess. And so that's
So
pretty cool.
Are they boats or are they
Mhm.
or are they ships?
Ships.
They're ships.
Okay.
Yep. So
And they're
that's
pretty.
Yes, they are, and they updated some Corsair ships and did a lot of things to make some of the smaller towns more fleshed out and really start to feel like Gondor. And so it's just a lot of smaller changes that, when they all come together, help make the zone feel a lot more believable. And I think that it still needs one more build, though. Um, they, or at the very least, 2 weeks for them to work on it before a release. So hopefully they'll take that into hopefully they won't release it before it's ready to be released, because I think it does need a little bit more time to polish off some areas, but it is definitely coming along quite nicely, I think.
Actually, there's one item in here that I am excited about.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens to be the very first item on here, and that is they're changing how
Yeah.
crippled works.
Yeah.
At last.
Mhm. I know when they changed the stat debuffs from like say what was it called, fright from Angrim and stuff like that to expire out of combat, and they didn't do that for the slows. I was hoping they would finally eventually do that for the
Well,
wolf and war cripples.
yeah,
At
the
least now they're
problem
doing it, I guess.
Yeah, the problem that they had, I believe, is the fact that the slow by itself during combat is relatively minor for most characters, unless you're one who's trying to run away from a mob in the middle of combat. So that's why I think they finally decided to add something to it. So they added a little bit more to it than is currently in there, the strength debuff, I believe it is, so that it's justifiable to be able to do that debuff and still have it in at the combat. Because
It's
I have
also
a
nice
feeling,
that it doesn't stack on itself anymore.
yeah, that was real. Because I was wondering
Mm-hmm.
why I would sometimes use it and it wouldn't disappear, and I guess it was because it was stacking on top of itself was the reason.
Yep.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how crippled I could get with having legs
Yes.
be crippled, so
All right. With that, we'll head into the store sales. Draculetta, what's on sale this week?
Free sample of the week is 100% XP boost for 1 hour. You get one of those per account, and your coupon code this week for that is XPEP8. XPEP8. And as far as the sale, it is another legendary item sale. 25% off legendary slot unlock, legendary tier upgrades, legacy scroll of combination, and relic removal scroll.
It's about time they have a legendary item sale. It's been
Yes,
so
I
long
mean,
since
it must
we've
be a
had
long
one.
time since one of those.
So, yeah,
Man.
I was just about to say, I was thinking what we really need right now is a legendary item sale.
Yeah, I mean, what else could we possibly want? I mean, it's not like there's a whole
Yeah.
There's nothing I want more than more legendary item.
it's not like there's a
stuff.
whole
Well,
LOTRO
I know
store out there
something
somewhere.
that was more useful than a legendary item sale.
No, of course not. There's nothing more important than alliance.
Yes, there is. More inventory space.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. For a limited time through July 3rd, you can get more inventory space in your bags. You can get up to 15 more bag spaces, which brings your total to 120. It currently is at 105. So you can get 15 more slots in your bags.
I didn't even know that. Wow.
Yes, I didn't know about it until I read the show notes and I logged in and bought them.
Yeah, I need to go do that. Like right now. Like I need to go do it.
And how much is that going to cost us?
It is $3.25 per set of 5.
So basically the same price as it was before when they introduced the sets of 5.
Yes.
But I think it's like maybe a couple pennies cheaper. But anyway, or
Yeah,
turbine points
I
cheaper.
think it used to be $9.95 was the old price.
Yeah, and the total price was $3.33, I think.
Yeah.
So a little bit cheaper, but basically the same.
All right. Let's go into the LOTRO Players news, and we'll begin with Sithrith about her outfit of the week.
So yeah, this week's outfit is different than what I normally do. This one is based on brigands and ruffians and robbers and thieves and all those kind of NPCs that we see in game. This isn't like a direct copy or like approximation
Yeah, it looks
of.
better.
Thanks. um, it's not supposed to be like a direct copy of the outfits that the brigands and ruffians and stuff wear, because that would be really hard because they don't really dress like any of the clothes that we have. But yeah, so I tried not to use the shabby shirt and like shabby pants and stuff that you can get from the Yule Festival Winter Home quest because I felt like that was too easy. So I tried to just stick to armor, and yeah, apparently it turned out quite well. It's my most liked outfit video so far, which is surprising because I don't even like this outfit very much. But apparently somebody likes it.
All
Those
right.
people who like to RP as ruffians in Bree.
Yeah, there are a few of them. And dang, what is the video highlight?
Yes, finally, this week's video highlight is the Blue Bonnet Blues, which is by Bards, Beards, and Longbeards, which I think I don't need to say anything else after that. But in case you don't know who that band is, they make very, very funny YouTube videos about their band, the VVB, and well, this is no exception. So basically, it's the story of Blue Bonnet and all the troubles that her life has brought, I suppose. It's pretty funny. I recommend everybody checks it out.
All right. Very well then. And what's the poll for the week?
Well, finally, for this week's poll was, would you pay for a Beorning starter zone? And we actually had 127 people respond to this, and 54% said yes. So that's pretty surprising, especially when you consider that 21% of the people who said no aren't even going to buy a Beorning. So that makes a fairly big majority of our viewers, at least, and our readers, actually are interested in a Beorning starter zone and would actually pay money just to get a starter zone, which really should be free. But they would be interested in paying money for it. That's how badly they want it, and I'm right there with them.
Mm-hmm. I would also pay more for a Bjorning that started at level 1. Like, I know they've said they're just going to start at level 50, but
Yes,
like
exactly.
if there was an option, I totally would pay more money to start at level 1.
But
Well,
if they
don't hold
did
your
put
breath.
that in there, don't
Yeah,
you
I
think that that would make a lot of people angry and saying, "Oh, well, you're just wanting the money grab because you started at
I
level
mean,
50." And...
it's kind of a no-win situation. Like, if they start at level 50, there's people upset that they can't play from level 1. If they start at level 1, there's going to be people upset that it's a money grab for the Gift of Valor or something.
Yeah.
Not to mention,
it's just
starting
lose
from
either
level
way.
1 means that obviously there's a lot more work to do there.
Well, that's why I said I'd pay extra, because like I understand
Mm.
that that's the reason they're not starting it. I think that's actually the big reason that they're starting at level 50 rather than lore reasons. They could probably swing some lore explanation, but
I don't know.
it's
I think that that actually might have been part of their agreement, but maybe not. I don't know. I could easily see that being part of the agreement. Well, you can introduce it, but you have to make it start on this side of the world or something like that. I could honestly see that being part of the agreement.
All right.
Well,
very well.
Yep.
All right, Brax. Oh, Brax is not here this week, but he did have a pick.
Hey,
and that
stop,
is-
stop.
Brax is
Here.
here this week.
Oh, he is here.
Happened again.
I barged right in.
You barged right in without telling me. Okay. Here also this week is Brax Wolf.
Maybe I should play a stealth class.
Yes.
Yeah.
After the number of weeks that you've walked in, surprising Pine Leaf, I think so.
A few weeks ago, Massively posted their regular the Road to Mordor column by Justin Olivetti. And this one was interesting because SIP is kind of on the verge of LOTRO burnout. And so it's kind of a post that's talking about why he thinks nothing will ever be as good as the Shadows of Angmar content in LOTRO. And I think this is very relevant to talk about now because of the new Bjorn class that we just kind of talked about in our last segment. Because all of those people who are going to be rolling a Bjorning are going to be skipping what a lot of people consider to be the best content in the game. He gives a couple of reasons why he thinks it's the best, and some of it has to do with nostalgia. Some of it has to do with the fact that they do all of the festivals and things in the lower levels, and so it's kind of a place where everybody gets together and gathers. And some of it just has to do with the fact that it reminds him of kind of a simpler time, and maybe you can tie that back to nostalgia as well. But it's kind of an interesting kind of argument that's going on now, somewhat triggered by the fact that you have to start the Bjorning at level 50, and that is that not only are you skipping 50 levels of content leveling and learning the character, but you're also skipping potentially some of the best parts of the game. I think difficulty factors into that as well. Even today, the difficulty in the old content is probably a little bit better balanced than the stuff at the higher levels. I don't know how I feel about this personally. I do have a certain sense of fondness and nostalgia for the older areas, and I certainly like rerolling characters, and I certainly wish that I would have the option to roll a Bjorning starting at level 1 so that I could experience all that with a new class again. But I don't know that I would call it necessarily the best content in the game, especially when you consider the way some of the questing flows and stuff like that. Wonder what you guys thought about that.
I think
Definitely.
that okay, you go first.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I definitely like the thing that really makes me not say that Shadows Angmar is the best content in the game is the questing. Like the questing does like a lot of the areas does not flow very well at all. Like how many times have you heard people or have complained yourself about the epic quests, especially like the later epic quests that have you travel back and forth for hours just to do things? Like that's not fun. That is super frustrating. There's a lot of back and forth stuff, and some of the stuff I think, I mean, since questing is such a huge part of the content, it's like it. That is the main thing that keeps me from saying it's like, yeah, nostalgia is good, but like if you just look at the content itself, it doesn't really stack up, I don't think.
Yeah, it's like a few of the big like cardinal sins they make. For example, the North Downs, or at least before the revamp, used to have that thing where you would have a solo quest line, and then the very last bit of the story, the very last quest, would be a group one. And if you couldn't find a group, well, you were stuck with an unfinished story. And for a game that prides itself on story, that's really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's obviously the other one where they ask you to go to an enemy camp, kill things, you kill the boss because he's in the way. You go back. They ask you to go back and kill the boss.
So that's really annoying.
I mean, that does occasionally turn up in other zones, newer zones now, but they tend to be more like you go there and the quest automatically pops up while you're there to kill him, instead of having to go back and be asked to do it.
And when you think about it, that just makes more sense. Like if you think about like how your character would be in that situation, they wouldn't just be like, okay, well, I only have to collect these sacks of flour, and then I'll go back, and like I won't bother to go kill that big bad orc over in the corner.
Yeah,
Because
that's like the real thing I loved about these newer areas is that your character seems to think for themselves more instead of just being a dumb slave that does what people ask them to do and that's it.
Right.
But yeah, it's kind of the same thing for me where the questing I feel is definitely not where Shadows of Angmar's biggest strength is. It's not bad, but I think the newer stuff does eclipse it quite a bit.
Yeah. My
I get the
main
feeling.
my main thing on this, basically trying to decide if Shadows of Angmar really is the best content LOTROs ever have, is oh wow moments. Rivendell was an oh wow moment when you come over that hill and you see the entire valley before you. That's an oh wow moment. Just about every player I've talked to remembers that moment when they went over and saw Rivendell Valley. I also had an oh wow moment when I entered into Moria for the first time. There's something just genuinely exciting about the first time you enter there. And then again when the next expansion came and the next expansion, and it just kept continuing to happen. And if it wasn't getting progressively better, I don't think I'd continually have those oh wow moments. I think eventually I'd realize that, well, I've seen all this before or something like that. But I think that it's continuing to get better and better because I keep having these oh wow moments every single expansion where there's something that just blows me away that Turbine does that's way above and beyond anything they've done before.
Like that view of Dol Amroth when we first saw it.
And when you see Helm's Deep for the first time and stuff like that, that just totally blows you away at the scale of things. And I think that that's one of the things LOTRO does best is that it's almost a surprise when you come across these like big iconic landscape areas. And that's part of Tolkien as well, I think, where usually the coolest places are inside a valley or something like that. And so you usually have this big reveal of like that next amazing spot. I know for a fact that every single expansion, when I'm doing it for the first time, I think that it's better than the previous one, and it feels like the story flows better, and things happen that just make it feel like a better, higher quality thing. And I really do think that each and every time I've found something that I can latch onto that says this is the thing that made this particular expansion make the game better moving forward. And I think that LOTRO has progressively gotten better and better. That being said, from a nostalgia point of view, I can definitely see his argument.
I think his point about it being like the hub of main activity, especially about lower level players, I think is a big point because there's no really other place in the level range of like 1 to 95.
And do you think
people really congregate?
Do you think that that's
maybe 21st Hall?
Yeah, but that's just more a hub than it is a social
At
congregating
this
area.
point, it's not so much more, not nearly as much a hub as say Bree, which is the hub.
And do you think that that's a failure on Turbine's part, where they just haven't put enough social things in these newer areas? Like, for example,
I
Bree
don't
has.
think so.
I think that's just a natural way of how it is, because it is after that point you sort of just end up
It's the
with
first
payroll.
main city.
Right, but I mean, I know other MMOs like SWOTOR, for example, have like capped level festivals and things like that. Whereas LOTRO, really, the festivals are always in the starter zones.
I think
And
it's kind of smart on their part, though, isn't it? Because if you're going to fragment the population like that, if you get to a point where you're really scratching for people on the servers, the lobies are going to be looking around, going, "Where is everybody during this festival?" You know.
Yeah,
And I
but
think
do you think that they should just not have any type of festival for a higher level area? Like that's basically limiting all the social stuff to that side of the Misty Mountains, I think.
I think it's
think you're
intentional though, because if you look at what they've done, they've revamped those lower level areas in the last couple of years, and I think they're absolutely planning to do it that way. I don't think it's a failure or an oversight, at least not in my opinion.
But do you think that that's a good idea? I mean, having no social like promotion in places beyond the early areas?
I think like the comparison you made to SWOTOR is a big thing because in SWOTOR all the story content is free. You can go to each of these areas without having to spend money. That's very different from LOTRO because pretty much from Bree onward, you have to spend at least turbine points and often money just to get there. So I think if they were to do what SWOTOR did with having festivals in the higher level areas, people would feel left out.
They would, but I mean the fact that there is nothing at the higher level, like basically from level, I don't know, maybe even like 30 on, there's just no social events held in the rest of the game. Doesn't that seem kind of weird that
Well,
I'd like to see a festival in Dol Amroth. I think that'd be pretty cool.
I mean, does
Like Swan
Gondor and
Festival.
Rohan and the other places not have festivals? I mean,
I can see Rohan not having a festival.
I could as
It's
well.
kind of
They're
in a
pretty
bad
grim.
spot
well,
to
they
really.
would. Rohan would have festivals, but not during the time in which the game takes place.
Right, but there has to be some type of thing that they could make for Gondor or some other location that we've been to before that has
Lothlorien could probably have
a
one.
festival. Yeah. Or Rivendell, there's probably elven festivals and things like that, so.
Well, actually, Lothlorien is perpetually having a party.
Well, this is
Yeah,
true.
that's true. In chat, PK, I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. Crichton? V. You know who I'm talking
Crichton.
about. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Crichton, yes, there you go. Brought up a good point. Festival Stable Masters can send us anywhere for a festival edition. So they could make like a little enclave somewhere
Yes.
in
Although it's
a higher
probably
level
actually,
zone.
now that you mention that, there is that point that the stables to festival places, the actual stable master doesn't show up anywhere except in the low level zones.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And that's an issue too, I think.
Yeah, but well, they do give you a map there though whenever you log in.
Yeah, that's true. You get a map
They do,
wherever you are.
but I mean, I still think that because they teleport you there, why not have I mean, it'd still be a level 1 festival or something like that. Or even just have an event and not call it a festival and have some type of event in a higher level area that involves a lot of players. Because that's what SWTOR did. It wasn't a festival. It was a Rakghoul event or whatever it was called.
That's kind of like the Amarthiel runs. They used to always be in the high level zones, something like that.
And that's just kind of gone away. And I think that that would be... Because here's the thing. I think that there should be role players in Rohan and role players in Gondor. I would hate it if, because for whatever reason, role players don't make it to Minas Tirith and role play there. I think that would be a huge lost opportunity. Because, I mean, I think that it adds so much to the game having those role players there, and yet, especially on Landerville, I really don't see them beyond, more than one or two occasionally. I don't see them beyond Bree, basically. I mean, that's basically where they
Well,
reside.
you've got Weatherstock.
You do, but that's once a
Yeah,
year,
but that's
and
like a
it's
once a
just
year
in the
now.
Lonelands one
Yeah,
zone
but the
over.
point, yes, but much of the role playing stuff is brought out by the role playing community, not so
Right,
therefore they've
but
chosen not to go into those areas.
But there
right,
has
but
sometimes
is that
Turbine has to give
because
incentive.
exactly, is that because there's no reason for a role player to go beyond? Or is that because the role players don't want to go beyond? And I
I guess
think
I
that it's
just,
partly both, I think.
as long as whatever they do is not exclusionary to lower level players, I think it would be fine. If you want to go to a different area, that would be cool, as long as everybody can continue to participate.
And also, we haven't had a new festival, really. I mean, there's the treasure hunt event and some things like that, but we haven't had a new festival. I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, Hobnanigans is technically old.
Yeah, well,
That's a whole thing.
yeah.
Right. I think we
Farmer's
played
Fair was
this.
the new one actually too.
Oh yeah, that is. But this will be like the third year, I think. So it's been around for a while now.
All right. Let's go into news beyond Lotro. And Endang, what is the news beyond Lotro this week?
Yes, well, if you guys remember the Nazgul Part 1 from last week or a few weeks ago, Part 2's now here, and it continues going on, and just for the screenshots alone, or the concept art and just art alone in this article, is worth looking through. Plus, it does a great job going through more of the lore of the Nazgul, and I think that this is a fantastic article, and if you're even curious about the lore, check out this article because it's really well done. And this was actually our most popular article this week. People really like the lore and stuff like that, and I know that Iogro has a lot more stuff coming. So
All right. Then our question of do we have a question for the week?
Several.
Was that
several
the
questions
prompt
finally.
to
Yes.
okay.
Azeroth.
Smooth delivery.
What happened this
Right.
week, Pineleaf? Normally you're so smooth, but then this week was. I guess everyone messes up
Yeah.
sometime.
I guess Adventures just threw everyone off.
Adventures really
Yeah.
did throw everyone off, for
Well, he wasn't sure whether he was going to do it this week, so I was trying to give him the option to opt out.
sure. Giving him the tap out option there for the question of the week.
Yeah. The topic I chose this week is kind of related to the one we had before, 2 weeks ago, about free to play, or at least Lotro's version of free to play. So this one is about the store in particular, which we kind of touched on before. So the first question I came up with is just simply, what do you think about what is currently being offered in the store today, the pricing and the availability of it? So, Andang, I suppose.
Um, I think that for the most part, the LOTRO store has a lot of fair pricing. There's a few things like XP boosts and particularly XP disablers that I think are overpriced. I think that some of the deed accelerators and things like that are overpriced. I think that things that allow um, things like the deeds where it really is a grind, I think that they could decrease the price a little bit for those accelerators. And particularly the virtues, it's like I think like $3 just for one virtue point. That's kind of ridiculous, I think. Um, there's a few other weird pricing things, particularly everything LI. They should just give that for free. Um, but I think that for the most part, as far as like just content goes, that's well priced. Raids are well priced, skirmishes are well priced, I think. Things like that. I do think, though, that I don't know if there could be more in the store, but I feel like that there's just some things that are missing, and maybe it's because of the actual like design of the store is really bad. But overall, I think that the actual pricing in the store is pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Brax.
Well, it's a little bit hard. I don't have a lot to compare to, but I think that for the most part, I agree with Andang. There are a few things that I wish they would do slightly differently. I'm not crazy about the way they've done War Steed dies,
Hmm.
the way
Yeah.
they packed them up, and the way that they're per character only. I wish there was an account-wide option for those. Um, not only the dyes, but also the colors for the steeds themselves. I think I got some on sale and I've never bought any again because they're just kind of they're per character as well. And if they were per account, I probably would think about it a little bit harder about buying those. But I'm probably going to pass on those for the rest of my tunes just because it gets to be a little ridiculous to buy the same colors over and over and over. Um, but other than that, yeah, I think it's pretty fair. Some of the storage prices seem to be a little bit inflated now. I think they were probably a little more fair before they changed the prices a year ago or so. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it.
Mm-hmm. Sithrith, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the war steeds, especially. I think they're they're I don't want to say they're starting to head in the right direction because I think the price is still way too high, but the Steed of Bree and that Rivendell steed they recently had, where you could either buy the single character steed war steed combo or a steed war steed combo that applied to every character in your account. That was definitely a step in the right direction, kind of. But again, I think it's still a little bit too expensive. Um, but it's definitely a good idea to have that as a like account wide option rather than just per character. And I think yeah, the war steed dies and stuff, and the dyes and the hide colors definitely benefit of being account wide.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else people would like to mention? Or do you would like to move on to the next question?
Next question.
Okay, then. The next one is more specific on what in the store would you like to see either added that maybe you've seen in other games, or something you would like to see removed because maybe you don't like the implementation, or you don't think it actually should be in the store to be available for purchase in the first place. For me, a few personal examples at least is one being most LI things actually, but in particular the relic removal scroll. Because back when they revamped LIs, which was quite a few years ago now, that used to be just a straight up part of the system. You could always remove relics when you deconned an LI, as far as I remember. When
Yes,
they updated it,
but
they gave players other things to reduce randomness, but they took away that ability and put the scroll in the store at the same time.
well, yes, the thing is that because people were complaining that they could not save their legacies and they demanded to have their legacies and they had to have something they felt that was not automatically gained. So we lost the relics in getting the legacies.
I'm not sure putting the scroll in the store at the same time, though, is the most moral move they could have done.
Well, let's face it, the business team was definitely involved in that decision.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, is there anything along those lines people would like to mention? Pine Leaf, I suppose.
I really couldn't think of anything that I would really actually added or removed. Yeah, nothing really strikes me at this time that I would like to go out and buy, so or that I would buy if they added it.
Okay.
I'm still
Anything
fairly
people-
I'm still fairly irritated by the way that they implemented the enhanced barter wallet.
Yeah.
I still think that should have been a fix as part of an expansion pack or a major update, as opposed to, okay, we're going to fix it and charge you in the store to fix the problem that we have with all of the barter items not being stored properly.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else people would like to add?
I think
I'll
that
just echo.
I think it'd be cool if they added in the soundtrack for sale for MP3 files into the store to where it would
Oh.
actually download it to a folder in your game client.
That's a good idea.
I think that that would be amazing, and I still don't know why they don't advertise that the soundtracks are for sale on iTunes and various other places. Because I don't know about you guys, but I love Chance Thomas's score enough to support it and actually try to basically get Chance Thomas to come back and do more. I don't know if that'll happen, but I think if they made it easier for players to buy his score, I think it'd be more economically viable for them to have Chance Thomas do more of their music.
I mean, for me, not even just Chance Thomas's stuff, but a lot of the little side tracks they've done. I know in Rohan,
Yep.
East Rohan, they kind of had a few that their in-house composer did, where I actually quite enjoyed, but you can't really get hold of them because they're just hidden in those files.
hmm
So having that would be actually pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really the only thing I can think of that needs to be added without adding in like a mechanic. Like, I mean, I think housing should be an entire section of the store, and they should, rebuild the housing system, and it'd make them enough money to where the rebuild would be worth their time. But
Should
obviously,
have
that's a little
like a
different. I
model
think.
home, and have a housing version of Lolly's Market with a model home with little model displays of different housing items and stuff.
That'd be cool. Have a Lolly's Market for housing. I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah Oakart housing.
Sell blueprints in this. Sell house blueprints in the store. That would be a good one.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think
They
that
would have
the main source, or no, I don't know about the main source, but I know a lot of MMOs base a good portion of their income on housing, and I think it's kind of weird how, LOTRO seems to, for me anyway, have a great, a great model as far as it goes, but I don't think that I think they're really missing out on housing. I think that that's a place that, even just selling more items for your house in the current system would be something that I'd like to see. And then see if that makes enough to actually try to do a revamp from there. Test the waters a little bit. I think that's probably one of their biggest weaknesses. Is I don't think that they've been adjusting the store gradually, but I think especially in recent times they haven't tried to experiment testing the water for things to see if there's a market for more stuff that they could add
Well,
to
they
really
did
make
add
money.
the Gift of the Valar. That was kind of experimental.
That was experimental, and it seemed to work fairly well. But one area in particular is PvP. I don't think that they've experimented hardly at all with in trying to monetize. And I know that in that community, they really want to buy stuff because they want more people to get involved with PvP and make it be a bigger part of the game. And I really do think that if they were to just even like add in more cosmetic skins for creeps and things like that, they would sell really well. Because I remember when they introduced the purchasable cosmetic skins, a lot of characters bought those for their creeps, and I think that they could really do that. So I think just experimenting more and more with the store is something that they could add in, where they just dip their feet in places and see if there's markets.
Especially experimenting with different cosmetics and different skins and things for various
think they've
objects.
actually released any new cosmetics for the store.
Yeah, it's
No,
been a
not
while.
since they
Available
opened
in
it.
game for ages.
Yep.
So here's another question here. Is just related to that. Do you think there anything there that you think doesn't belong in the store? Like I know Brax mentioned the Bala wallet that should have been done better. Do you think there's anything kind of similar to that that either should be made free or available to players as is, or maybe just shouldn't be able to be bought in any kind of situation?
I think the XP
Bare-chested
disabler.
dwarf.
Bare-chested dwarf. The XP disabler for me is something that just, I don't know why that was ever introduced. That really, really made me angry, especially since they made some type of XP change to where players would actually be getting even more XP, and at the same time they introduced that disabler, and I think that that was really terrible, in my opinion.
Yeah, that might have just been timing, because there are quite a few people who like that XP disabler.
Yeah, but I don't think people should pay for it. I think that should have been a
Yeah.
free introduction into the game.
I
People
see.
should at
Okay.
any time be able to disable their XP.
Yeah,
in my
I
opinion.
believe the explanation at the time was that the work to do it would have been so much that there's no way they would have been able to do it without making a profit of some kind.
The explanation is that the people in the business office would have vetoed it if there wasn't some way to monetize it.
Or that.
Or at the very least, make it account wide.
Yeah.
Yeah, an account-wide one would be good. Or at least
That
the
would be
way
really
it's
good.
like account bounce, you can sort of equip it or unequip it and swap it between your characters if you wanted to. As is, as soon as you equip it to one character, it's stuck there.
Or make it be like 5 TP as opposed to whatever it is in the
Well,
store.
that's no profit at all, really.
Yeah, but
There's
I
no
don't.
profit to be made.
There's no profit being made free, but their excuse was the fact that they couldn't have coded it into the game. It'd take a lot of work. Well, if that's the case, make it be cheap. I remember that was an argument that was made on CSTM back in the day, and I think that they really messed up with that item. I think that it should have been free or really inexpensive for players. I think it's just kind of ridiculous how they're doing both sides of the XP thing. They're making money off of, and I think that's ridiculous.
I think just the pricing thing is sort of a way to decide how cheap they can make it without it actually being so cheap that they don't make any profit.
Yeah, and I
don't
mean,
know how their metrics decide that. So
and I mean they do need to make money, but I think that they really should have tried on that one to make it be less expensive, a little bit more. But
So what about, for example, things like stat tomes, which are hard stat buffs that you cannot really realistically acquire in game, or things like store parts, store consumable buffs that give you a definite advantage, statistical advantage in game over other players, especially in things like PvP. Do you think those really have a place being in the store?
Kind of related to those, not one of the things you mentioned directly, but personally, I think the Gift of Valor was a bad idea. I understand why people want it, but I think it's not a good idea. I don't think it helps. I don't think it helps the health of the game in general, because it means people are paying to skip a huge amount of content, and it just seems counterproductive to me.
Honestly, I don't care. If I suppose some people have more time than money, and some people have more money than time, and they're paying for it either way, in whichever means they have that in abundance, I guess. So if somebody wants to pay to skip content or pay to up their stats, it really doesn't even bother me, because that just means somebody else is grinding and paying with time instead of money.
it doesn't bother me in LOTRO, especially with them not introducing raids in a while. It really has not bothered me at all, because LOTRO's not the focus of this game is not at getting at cap, and so if players want to
I'm not
spend a
saying
little
I
bit more money,
disagree with it because I'm like competing with people. I'm just saying I think it's counterproductive for Turbine themselves to like incentivize, or maybe not
Yeah.
incentivize, but have that option to be like, hey, we know that this content isn't great, skip it,
Well,
I
or
think that
something.
you
it's
know,
appropriately priced though, to where they are getting the same amount of money either way, if that makes
oh, well.
sense.
So you know what bugs me concerning the stat tomes?
Mm-hmm.
The fact that a stat tome has to be an exact match on when you use it. In other words, if you have a stat tome 5, you could only use it
Yeah.
if you have used
Yeah.
stat tome 1, 2,
Mhm.
3, 4.
That's
You
stupid.
can't use a stat 5 as a stat tome 1. You have to go to the store and buy the other 4 or some miraculously other way
It should
Yeah.
just be a
getting it.
+1 instead.
Yep, I agree.
I think a big part of the reason there's not so much upset people about these stat tomes and other such like statistical advantages is that LOTRO is not a competitive game with other players. The only really competitive part is PvMP, in which case you're competing against the creeps, which is a completely different part of the game, really. It's not like, say, SWTOR, where you are actually competing against other players who have had to level and grind the same way you have. It's just kind of a unique setup, at least in terms of PvP, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have any problem with the Gift of the Valar just because I if I had a little bit less time, then I would probably purchase it not for my first character, but for alts and things like that. But luckily I have enough time to be able to play it without having to pay extra. But I can definitely see how that could come in handy for a lot of people. One thing that I forgot to mention that I would really like to see added to the store is a tour of Middle Earth buff, basically, or a different character or something like that. That where that character's only purpose is basically to allow players to tour the landscape without getting attacked by mobs or anything like that. And the reason I think that that'd be cool is because I know a lot of players that just have absolutely no time to play Lotro. And they've said several times that they want a way to be able to just look at the landscape. And I think Turbine could make a lot of money just allowing players to just tour the landscape. And I think that that could also solve some role-playing problems as well, of the role players being in Bree only.
Tourist mode sort of thing, I think would probably be difficult to set up so that people can't exploit it in terms of, say, deeding or transporting
Well, the
across the
thing
landscape.
is,
But I think if they could make it work, it would be very attractive for lore fans, especially.
well, my thing is, don't let have no type of progression of the players, and just they don't get any XP or anything. They're just basically a cameraman. They don't
I
really
basically see
exist
it
in
as
the
being like a
world.
session play character.
Yeah, I mean it's basically they're not really in the world. They're just like touring it, and they can still interact with players and things like that, but they can't go anywhere. Players can't. They're just limited by enemies. They still get hit by one-shotters, but they don't have to worry about enemies and things like that. So an easy way to do that would be just make them be 10 levels above whatever the level cap is. Problem solved. Move on, and just not make it be available to the other people, because I think that that could be something that a lot of players would be interested in.
Yeah, might be something worth looking into. Okay, so the next question here is, where do you think the store has maybe advanced too far? Maybe not necessarily in terms of pricing or the items they've added, but in the way it's been implemented into the game, or even the reverse, where maybe they haven't kind of promoted it enough in certain aspects. So, for example, LIs, where it's pretty much entrenched at this point. Do you think areas like that, it's maybe gone too far to an extent where you kind of almost need it just to actually get by? I suppose we'll go Andang again.
Deed grinding, I think they probably would have edited the older areas deed grinding if it weren't for the store. I think that one area, though, that it's advanced too far is the store itself. I don't think that their design of the store currently meets what it needs to because of all the stuff that they've added into the game. I think that they need to do a total redesign of the store where people can find things a lot easier and it loads quicker and things like that. It's kind of ridiculous, and also the amount of stuff that's displayed on screen at one time in the store, it's usually just a few items. If they would, decrease the size of the icons and allow more things on screen, it could be used a lot more effectively, especially since there aren't scroll bars. It's just moved to the next page and there's only like 4 things on a page. It's pretty ridiculous. I
It
mean,
loads very slowly.
there's a lot
Yeah.
more effective ways they could implement the store, I think, and I think that's its biggest weakness is just how it's advanced. They've added so many things to it and haven't really updated the actual design, and I think that's a really big weakness it has.
Do you think there's anywhere in game then? Did you think it maybe gone too prominent, aside from deeding?
I mean, LIs as you mentioned, but I don't know too prominent. I think that it's because of the model that they chose, it's needed. I think that, and I don't know if the way that it's been coded, if this is possible, but I think making it be less obvious for VIPs and allowing them to turn off notifications every time they get turbine points and things like that. And I don't remember what it is, but there's something that happens that really annoys me when I do something and a notification comes up every single time that I could purchase something to make it be quicker. I don't remember what it is, but
When you close your legendary item window, maybe.
Yeah.
That
yeah,
happens a
that's
lot.
probably it. Yeah,
Always accidentally click the buy another slot thing.
yeah, yeah. There's some things I could do. I think the main thing though is having the ability for VIPs to turn the store off would be cool. Or at least decrease it to where it's not an icon on your screen and things like that if you're paying, the monthly or yearly fee.
So, do you think, this is just a general question, do you think it would simply be enough for there to be one button on your panel that goes to the store and not having it be in a whole bunch of other panels? It's in the deed, the LIs, the character panel to buy, I think, virtues, all other places there. Do you think those are really needed? Or could they
I
just
mean,
get away with the basic button?
I can see like having some buttons in other places just to let people know, like, hey, if you want this, like for example, the Worsted and the cosmetic windows, oh, like just so you know, like you can get more slots here if you want them. But like stuff like when you click on the traits, like if you're looking in your trait panel and you're clicking traits to see what trait to slot or whatever, like it used to be you could. I think I talked about this last time we talked about the store.
Yeah.
If you click on a virtue, rather than opening up your deed to like a deed that awards that virtue that you're currently in progress with, it opens up the store now instead. Like that's the kind of thing where they should not have that button there
That
because
is annoying.
it's so annoying. So I think like maybe like having like a little coin icon on the bottom of a window or something that will like let you know like, hey, something related to this is purchasable, and like you can click the coin and it'll bring up related items to whatever window you're in. I think like that would be a lot less intrusive, but also at the same time like letting you know that there's things you can buy if you're into that sort of thing.
So, would you guys...
I'd just like to say real quick that they are in your face about some things in the store, but I honestly believe that if they weren't, then Helm's Deep would probably be a worse expansion because they wouldn't have as many employees to build it, and Gondor moving forward and things like that would be not as good
I'm
as well.
sure being in your face with these things works. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it, and other companies wouldn't do it.
Yep.
But it's still a bit
Yeah.
irritating.
Then why is DDO not in your face? Because they have a
Well,
completely different paradigm on how they do things?
I think DDO's a lot smaller team though as well, isn't it?
I would.
Okay, yeah,
think-
probably. So you say because it's a smaller team, then they don't need as
Well, I think that for whatever their profit margin is off of what they're doing, it's working. I
Okay.
think with LOTRO to keep their, they have a very large team that builds LOTRO still. I think that they need to be a little bit more aggressive at times in order to get the funds that Warner Brothers wants from the IP. I think Warner Brothers isn't as interested in getting much money from DDO as it is getting money from their Lord of the Rings franchise. They kind of have a monopoly on that, and I think that they see a potential for more money being made, and Turbine has to meet that.
So, where do you guys think the Mithril coin system works into this then? Because you've mentioned like having to click on things to buy things from the store to use it. Do you think the Mithril coin system has kind of worked as being a middleman between those? So it's not quite as intrusive as the store, but it allows you to buy things sort of from it in a way.
If we didn't get them from Hobbit presents, then I'd be a lot more annoyed by Mithril coins. But because they are a chance drop through Hobbit presents, I actually really do like the Mithril coin system.
In
I
its
was-
first implementation, I did not like the Mithril coins. Well, it wasn't like I didn't like them. I was like they weren't intrusive enough to like really care about them at first. I felt like, at least for my play style. But with Lalia's Market now, I am getting the of course, and with getting the Mithril coins and Hobbit presents, those two things combined, I'm totally all for the Mithril coins.
I was going to actually say earlier that I wish they wouldn't have two in-game currencies, and I understand why they've done it. And functionally, the Mithril coin system works very well, but it still kind of feels to me like they're trying to obfuscate the amount of money that you're actually spending by having you convert to two different currencies. And to me, I don't like the way that feels.
Yeah, I can see that.
Do you think it would be best then to simply have, like, using the Lawyer's Mac as an example, you click on a piece of cosmetic or whatever, instead of having it show the mithril coins you have and how much it would cost, it would simply come up with the turbine points and you would buy them direct with that without actually having to open up the store?
Yeah, I don't understand why they can't do that unless it's something that's tied to their old billing system.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's because it's tied.
Yeah.
Is that in order to get a point thing in turbine points, they have to connect to the store. I have a feeling their infrastructure doesn't handle that, and who knows how much it'll take to change their infrastructure.
Or it's harder to display a number of Mithril coins than it is a number of
And if the store
TP.
is down, then any contact with the store would also be down, in which case anything that you currently get with mithril coins would not be available. Well, mithril
Fredalos
coins,
in the
those
chat.
are always up.
Fredalos in the chat brings up a really good point. He says, I'm annoyed the mithril coins are bound to the server you get them on. Yes, that is very annoying.
Well, yeah, that
Because
is.
it's like your turbine points are account wide, but your mithril coins, which, is
More like
basically another form of turbine
Yeah,
points.
they're more like
You
actual
can't bring
coins.
them
They
with
work
you.
like actual in-game currency.
Right, but because they end up in the barter wallet, you can't take
Right.
them with you if you transfer servers.
Drac.
But yeah, as far as I know, the LOTRO store itself is ran by a separate company.
They are.
Yes,
yeah.
that's true.
So I think that's why you're having the whole Lalia's Market thing. That is done by Turbine, and I think they can, do that, but they can't for some reason implement it in with the other company. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but I know there's a lot of other games that use that same company that does the
Yeah.
Turbine or the
If,
store.
And I mean, honestly, if Mithril coins were not part of Hobbit presents, I would agree with everything you've said. But because there's a way to still get them in game for free, I don't have as much of an issue with them, I guess.
I guess it's because something kind of on a bigger scale, obviously, but like the chat filter, where they've mentioned it's taken from a third party and they can't change it because they don't have the authority to. So we're kind of stuck with hunter skill names being censored.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything else to add on this question? Okay then. The final question we have here is a more broader question. I think it's kind of just, do you think, in terms of the development of how the game has gone since at least you've started playing, the things they've done with it, and the kind of decisions they've made in both design and what's added to the store, what's been kind of left behind, for example. Do you think the store has been the core of how they decide these things? Do you think they get driven the way the game has been designed since its inception?
Well, there's one thing that argues against that, even though there are some things that make it look like it is. But the one thing that argues against it is their decision to table housing updates, because I'm sure that if it was done by the store being a primary decision, they'd have a lot more reason to want to do those housing updates because most of the things we could think of involve the store.
And also, Pineleaf deed design in later zones has gotten better
yeah.
and better. And
Right.
some other things that are kind of grindy have gotten not as much, that would have made them more money through turbine points.
Slayer deeds have pretty much stabilized at this point. I think it's normally like 100 and then 200, which is what it's been since Dunland, I believe.
Still way better than the Shadows of Angmar days, though.
The late
Ended
days
wise
of
too.
Angmar.
Ugh.
Yeah, I think about this question every time I hear that they're coming out with another new system, because it seems like every time there's a new system, there's a slot within that system or a tree within that system that is going to cost turbine points to go above and beyond what the system delivers in and of itself. So
Yeah.
that does kind of make me wonder. It's like, why do we have so many different systems? Oh, well, there's another little slot for a turbine point. You know, once you
I
got
feel
all of
like-
the character stuff unlocked or the account stuff unlocked, it's like, well, it's got to come up with something else now for the high level people.
I feel like they tended to introduce a whole bunch of new systems though before the store was a thing as well.
They did.
It's kind of Turbine's thing is just making tons
To
of new
make things
systems
and then abandon them.
and then not do anything with them.
Yep. One thing that does go against it though is Warsteed cosmetic colors definitely goes against it. I think that was really driven by the store. I mean, especially considering that on Bulroar they were $1 for 100 turbine points for an individual color, whereas now it's like 300 or 500 TP.
$5.95 for
It's 595 TP
colors.
for 4 colors.
Yes. Last time I checked.
So yeah, that's
More
ridiculous,
seed appearances
especially
in general. The whole customization.
When it's on
also.
sale, it's usually like $3.95.
yeah, especially the fact that the colors don't actually go together is the real issue,
Tell me
and the
about
fact
it.
that the hides have a different thing that you have to buy for as well, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah. That sounds like to me the less as a matter of driving the design as something the bean counters add on top of the design. So
Driving the bank account,
Yeah.
is that what you're trying to say?
Well, the thing is,
Yeah.
I consider the cosmetic system very much so part of the Warsteed design. I think that the cosmetic system and being able to actually like they were definitely selling you on the fact that you could actually customize your horse leading into it.
Yeah, yes. That itself, I don't. Yes, but I mean some of the details of it, though, the pricing cost and stuff like that. That sounds like something that isn't necessarily directly with the design, since the pricing could have been different and the design could have still held the
Right,
same.
but the main design change, I think, is the fact that they made it to where you have to actually buy the packs buy the colors in packages. I think is a design change. I think.
I think another example that Fredless just mentioned is festivals, and that is a big one for
yeah.
me.
Oh,
because
yeah.
That
Festival, yeah,
decision to
that is
turn
being
them
driven by the
into
store.
days, which you can then conveniently reset with mithril coins, is what killed the enjoyment of festivals for me. Because before you used to go in there, say 30 minutes, get some tokens, buy an item or two, and there you go. You're done for a bit. You can come back later, like in an hour or two if you want to, and get more stuff. But now you have to you hit a day to do it. You can do it for a day and that's it.
Yeah, festivals are
Yeah.
ridiculous.
They ban
And
you
the
from doing any
prices-
more stuff. Yep.
The prices have reflected that as well. Because some of the prices
Hobnanigans.
are ridiculous.
Just Hobnanigans in itself is a huge example of that because the prices are obscene in how much you are required to grind just to get a single item.
Yeah, like I understand wanting to have them be like long-term goals, but I feel like it's a little bit too long-term unless you pay for stuff.
All right, have we finished out our discussion on this matter?
I suppose we have.
Then we'll head on to donations then. Let's have a big thanks to Darwin of Landreville for a $10 or more donation to Lotro Players. I just made a donation and wanted to say how much I enjoy listening to Lotro Players news each week. I just watched the Update 14 videos and am incredibly excited to see it all myself. It was great to hear the genuine excitement of Andang and Ethros as they took us on a tour. Thank you and keep up the good work. Excitement from Ethros?
Yeah, we've
Darwin
kind
of
of been a bit like I don't want to say negative, but kind of debating and stuff like this past half hour. But in terms of the landscape in this new era, it is phenomenal. And I know I like to gush about the landscape a lot, but they really have outdone themselves with this one, and that's why I was genuinely excited to be exploring it.
Yeah, and
And that shows you how much there is to update 14. If Ethros gets excited,
yeah, I do think though that I really do believe that didn't force the if they didn't force in these, cosmetic, these store purchase buttons and things like that, I really do believe that Lotro might actually start to be coming in a decline. Because I honestly think that is what's keeping Lotro in the black and continuing to get better and better. Because I mean that epic battle system, like it or hate it, it took a ton of money to develop, I'm sure. And
Well, that's their fault.
the mounted combat the mounted combat system took a lot of money to develop, and all these systems they've been spending literally years and years on preparing moving into it. And I think without the store sales giving them money to continually develop and actually be able to fund these systems to get the real scale of Middle Earth, I honestly believe that they wouldn't be able to do everything that they want to do within the limits of their engine. They'd instead be more limited by their budget, I think.
all right, very well. And also a big thanks to Ursik for a $5 or more donation to Lotro Players. To help support Lotro Players, simply go to the donations page where you can help the podcast of Lotro Players and also help support the site. We have $5 and $10 mentions where you can donate and get a mention on one or all of our active podcasts for an episode depending on the amount. For $5, you can get a mention on the podcast of your choice. For $10 or more, you can get a mention on all of our active podcasts. Once again, we don't have any reviews, but if you would like to give us a review, then post it on the feedback pages of iTunes. And now for our featured comments. First, from Scott. Let's see, who would be a good person to read this? Any volunteers? I don't. That must mean that's Brax who volunteered, right?
Why?
You chose you.
You haven't
Because
had your
you were
session
late
today,
and
Brax.
snuck in.
Yeah, you were
Yeah.
late and snuck in. This is payback, Brax.
I didn't know that's what that meant. Okay.
Note to self, be on time next time.
Note to self: read through the show notes so you. Okay. I think one part of the reason for the departure can be seen in the transcript at question number 19. Raids are an order of magnitude larger and are vastly more risky than anything else. They are definitely on a level all their own. The part of that I want to focus on is the use of the risky. I imagine Turbine is well aware of the difficulties they have had in recent years producing instances that don't get hindered by bugs or rendered outright unplayable by them. Dragok bugging out in multiple ways. This is his examples of them. Flight to the Lonely Mountain rendered unplayable by many by lag spikes upon spawns of groups of ads is another. Neither were resolved quickly, leaving raiders very frustrated at being unable to utilize the new raids. Additionally, Flight to the Lonely Mountain closed by Turbine due to numbers of people exploiting a loophole left on it, First age symbol drops repeatedly assigned in locations where they later said they intended second age symbol awards. Big sick battles were not warmly received by the Raiders, who feel unable to perform their class roles there. I reiterate all of the to point out that Turbine, while not in a position to discuss it, is obviously well aware of their track record in recent years in the development and deployment of raids. It is not great, but they know they can make landscape quests with a much lower rate of problems, and when there are problems, they've been able to resolve and or bypass them fairly quickly. They're not risky. Incidentally, I think their decision to stop delivering instance clusters and raids is also the reason we're not seeing expansions. How could they justify that additional price? I, for one, would not have guessed 2 years ago that I'd be about to step into Gondor without an expansion tied to it. You would not have been able to convince me of that possibility back then.
Yeah. Now, considering...
Well, the thing is, Turbine's tried to, in the past, not have the instance clusters be part of the expansion. So I don't think that that is necessarily a valid argument from the point of view of Turbine. I can see it from the point of view of the consumer, but I don't think Turbine's at all concerned about that when they consider if they're going to do an expansion or not.
Yeah.
I think the disagreement I would make is that the mention of having trouble with these in recent years. Like, I even remember it being mentioned like a few months ago about how they had back in the day having a huge amount of bugs when the Rift first came out. I would imagine, so considering how large it is. I get the feeling that a lot of this is just people remember all the good stuff from those most beloved raids and instances, so they forget just how many problems they had when they first came out.
Well, I think also a lot of the player base wasn't around when those were introduced, and so they see those working just fine, and maybe don't consider
since they
the fact
never
that they were so
experienced
buggy.
them when they were broken.
Actually, has the Rift ever been 100% fixed?
I don't think so. I think it still has a little bit of a bug in one part. And I think
So,
that is part of the... I mean, yes, Turbine hasn't been able to well implement the instances, and that's probably part of the reason why they're not as popular. But if Turbine's not able to well implement them without bugs and hasn't really been able to, then, you know, maybe they shouldn't be building instances if that's part of what's deterring them. Maybe that's, you know, part of the reason why they're just not going to build them, because there's every single instance that I can remember has had that's been like the instance of that expansion or update or whatever has had an issue of some level that has made it to where a percentage of the player base hadn't been able to actually finish the instance. Particularly Dracok, I think, was the worst.
Dragok is probably the most notorious example because of how often.
Inevitably, when they introduce a new instance cluster, one of the instances ends up getting closed to close up an exploit that
I remember
appears.
Orthanc did that. Yeah.
And
one of the most...
I think it's happened pretty much every time there's an instance cluster released.
I remember when they first introduced skirmishes, there was a time when Tuckborough was closed. And
there's a time when Siege of Gondomar was closed.
And the Rift in Niskashu was closed.
And there was, of course, Survival Barrel Downs, when you had the exploit by burglar stealthing in there and just surviving the full hour.
That was closed for a while. I remember that. That one was closed for a long time.
Yeah, I think Dragok especially is the biggest example because of how bad it was bugging out. Like, people were saying it was happening very often, and also the fact that it pretty much was never fixed.
Yeah. Well, that's the
they
problem.
Tried
is
so
that,
many times. It just they could never get the core issue solved.
Yeah, and one of the things is it depends on how it's played. There's some players who said that their group goes in every week and it's never bugged out except when they have some other person in theirs. So apparently, Turbine must be using an optimal method when they're testing it. And it looks like you have to do something that they didn't think of in order to break it. And a lot of people, of course, players like to do things that aren't exactly as intended.
And I think if Turbine was able to make less buggy raids and, you know, things like that, that would obviously cut down a lot of their development cost, because they have to have people troubleshooting that, trying to find the issue for, you know, literally, I mean, especially with like Epic Battles and Dracok, I mean, it's literally like months and months afterwards. They're still dumping a ton of money and employee time into them, and I think that that's one of the main reasons why they can't, or at least right now they're not willing to make a lot of them, is because they just can't devote that amount of money and time because the instances are so complicated in the system that Lotro's in. It's just they can't do them without there being some type of an issue that'll cost them a lot more money beyond just the initial cost.
Now, concerning when Draculeta was going sick on big battles, I've noticed that Turbine themselves in their patch notes, actually in their big header they said epic battles, but later on down they said big battles instead.
Mhm.
I know, that totally annoys me.
That's just sick.
Oh! We did not get any
Good one.
emails this week, but you can contact us at lotroplayers.mymiddleearth@gmail.com, and you can also follow us at Twitter, lotroplayers at lotroplayers, Andang at pvmp_andang, Braxwolf at Braxwolf, Sithrith at Sithrith, Draculeta at Draculeta_72, Etheros at Etheros, Lillicate at Lillicate Buggins, Mystery at Mystery XOX, and Pineleaf at Pineleaf Needles. And you can join us live. Lotro Players Adventures goes live every Saturday at 5 p.m. server time, and Lotro Players News goes live every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. server time, and that is United States Eastern Time. And you can join us by going to lotroplayers.com/live, and be sure to join us in the YouTube chat. That is all for today, and this is Pineleaf Needles asking you to skirmish responsibly.
Death.